What's up, everyone? My name is Trevor Carlson, host of the Formula Podcast, where we break down and explore the elements of health, wealth, happiness, and achievement with guests from all over the world. And today, I have my friend Brad Dwyer from Hatchlings with me. We're going to talk about the history of Hatchlings, the future of augmented reality, and Brad's going to give you a little bit of business advice.
And I'm Brad Dwyer. As Trevor said, I am the founder of a company called Hatchlings, which is a social game company that I started out in my dorm room about 10 years ago. And now I have been working on computer vision and augmented reality with a new startup.
The Formula Podcast wouldn't be possible without some pretty awesome sponsors that are willing to support the show. So the first sponsor has been with us for quite some time. That's Lady Boss. They provide women's workouts and health supplements to help women live healthier lives. Now, if you're interested in checking out any of their workouts or their supplements, go ahead and head to theformulapodcast.com and check out our sponsored products page. Now, our second sponsor just got started with us here recently. That's Liquid Web. Now, if you've listened to any of our episodes with like Adrian or Ketsu or anybody that's doing any type of drop shipping or e-commerce, Liquid Web has some e-commerce solutions to help you get a store up and running ASAP. And they were willing to actually give 33% off to people who listen to the Formula Podcast. So when you go to liquidweb.com and check out their products, make sure and type in Formula 33 when you check out to get 33% off. Big thanks to them for hooking us up and keeping this show rolling. That's all from our sponsors. Now, let's do this thing. Brad, thanks for taking the time to chat with me today. So you've been running Hatchlings for quite a while now, right?
Yeah, we celebrated our 10th birthday in February.
Yeah.
Flew the team out to Las Vegas for our birthday party.
Oh my God.
Users. It was cool.
That sounds like a hell of a good time.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that after the show's over. So walk me through how you became like the business person you are today with a 10-year-old company and one of the more popular Facebook games out there today.
Probably the genesis of like the business side of things was I was in junior high and I wanted to make a website for like a video game that I was playing, and so I kind of just screwed around in Flash and made a website. And then one of the guys that I was playing with was like, hey, I have like a shutter company in Arizona. Could you make my company a website? And I was like, yeah, I think I could do that. I had no idea how to do that, but I figured, yeah, I'll figure it out. I was in 8th grade and like, I don't know, I had pirated all the software that I'd probably need to do that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I made that guy a website, and then word kind of spread that I was this like young kid that knew how to do computer stuff, and so then all these older people started asking me to do stuff. And I got involved in a forum online. It was called Karupa Forum, of all these like designers and like web developers, mostly centered around like the Flash community, but also HTML and web technology. And I had a couple of mentors on there that thought it was kind of funny that I was this like junior high age kid that was like posting with all these adults. And they kind of took me under their wing and taught me some other programming stuff that I would need every time I'd run into a problem. And it got to the point where in high school I started my own web design company.
Yeah.
And I had some of these guys that I'd met from online who had too many clients for them to service, and so they would basically subcontract that out to me. They were probably collecting $200 an hour from whatever client and then subcontracting it to this like freshman in high school. And the clients had no idea. And I ended up working for indirectly for companies like PAX TV and Charles Schwab. I kind of feel bad for whoever used the online mortgage calculator made by the freshman in high school.
Oh my God.
But those are the types of projects that I was just kind of charging hourly for and continuing to learn and build my skill set.
Are they still using that mortgage calculator?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think Flash has kind of been deprecated.
Right. So you've been building products for Fortune 500 companies as a freshman in high school, mortgage calculators, whatever. So what happened after that?
So I found out about this thing called Google AdSense, and I had my parents sign up for an account for me because I wasn't old enough to create my own account, and started creating like my own websites. I thought it was so cool that like I could have a website out there that was like my own like personal servant that like was making me money even while I wasn't working on it. So like I would, every morning before I would go to school, I'd sign on and be like, yes, I made 14 cents while I was sleeping. It was the coolest thing ever because I didn't do anything. Like, it was just like passive income. And so I got interested in like trying to build that. And so I went from like 14 cents a day to like 50 cents a day to like $12 a day to, you know, by the end of high school, I was making like a decent amount of money, probably like maybe $100 a day or maybe a little bit less than that at that time. And I had like a couple of websites that were actually pretty popular. So I had a site called pspprogramming.com, which the old PlayStation Portable, there was like a homebrew community around it. And I created a web forum where those people could like come together. And that was actually, I was teaching myself how to do like C programming through like hacking the PSP and like just created a community around that. And there were several thousand people that were all in this web forum that were talking about that. So that was getting like traffic and making money, and that was like really cool. And so I think it was about that time, so about the time I graduated from high school and went to college, that I was starting to think about like, how do I turn this into something that like, it can just like sit there and make money and I can go do whatever I want and just like have this passive income stream. And at that time it was when I started like really thinking like, oh, maybe I could start like a company rather than just a website. And so I started like coming up with projects of my own and putting those out on the internet. And you know, I had a bunch that were not successful at all and a couple that were like moderately successful. I think that PlayStation site, PSP site, was one of the most successful ones until my freshman year in college, when I read an article about how Microsoft Word was getting rid of the .doc files, and with Word 2007 they were coming out with the .docx files. And this article was about how that is actually just a zip file, and so if you change the extension to .zip, you can unzip it, and then there's basically just XML inside of it, and so you could read it with, you know, just a regular like web browser. And at the time there was no like docx reader for Mac. Microsoft was like, oh yeah, that'll be coming out soon, and you couldn't read them on Linux either. So I was like, well, if it's a zip file and you can just do this, I could make a website that you could just like upload your file, it would unzip it, spit that XML file out, put some ads in the middle of your document for, you know, the privilege of having it being read. And I made that in like 4 hours. And it got picked up by a whole bunch of media. It got covered by like Lifehacker and all these like awesome sites that I would read every day. And that was like my first like taste of like viral success. And then I made probably the stupidest business decision I've ever made. And the next week I sold that website.
Oh no.
For like, I think it was like $15,000 that I sold it for. And at the time I was like, holy shit, I'm rich. Like, this is so cool. I spent 4 hours on this. I sold it for $15,000. That's like $3,500 an hour. Like, that's so cool. And then what happened was, because it had gotten all that press, it got all these like super powerful backlinks. And when you would search for docx or docx converter or like how to read docx files on Google, it was the number 1 or 2 website for the next couple of years for the like default Microsoft Office file format. And so those people that I bought it from probably made hundreds of thousands of dollars off those ads that were getting put into those files.
Yeah, what do you think you would tell yourself then, now with your experience you have?
To think longer term, think bigger. I don't know. I mean, it's not like that site could have ever been like $1 billion company or anything, but I think thinking a little bit more long term than, oh, somebody's gonna write me a check right now for this thing. Like, I don't know, like having a plan for that.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's kind of been a theme of like, I just do cool stuff and put it out on the internet, and like, I don't know where that's gonna go. When I started Hatchlings, I had no idea I'd be sitting here 10 years later still working on that, which I guess we can talk about Hatchlings later.
So what happened between you selling that, your first product, to starting Hatchlings?
So, like I said, I was kind of interested in making my own websites and getting this like passive income thing going. And I was thinking about like, what's my next thing that I could launch that'd be really cool. And the hypothesis that I had was, I'd observed all my friends in college who were like going to these parties, and Facebook was like starting to become a popular thing, and they were all super worried about like any pictures of them drinking or whatever being posted on Facebook. And in the course of that, I found Facebook's new API that they had just launched like a couple months before that, and I was like, oh, integrating with Facebook, that's exactly what I want to do. So I started looking into that and all the endpoints that I would use for this professional profile thing, and started programming that. And then in doing that, I found like this little like piece of the Facebook API that was a profile box. So like an app could put like a little window into your profile, and you could populate that with whatever you wanted. So a lot of games were using it as like a high score list. So I started like just kind of like thinking about what what could you do with this that other people aren't really doing?
Yeah.
And so I just kind of did a weekend project where I made an Easter egg hunt game. And so over the course of the weekend, I had one of my friends from the online forum that I was on all through high school draw me some Easter eggs. And I programmed this Easter egg hunt game where when you installed the application, it would pop up this little box in your profile. Sometimes there'd be an Easter egg there, sometimes it would be empty grass. And the idea was one of your friends would come to your Facebook profile, they'd see this Easter egg sitting there and be like, what the hell is that? They'd click on it, and then like that would pop them into the game. They'd get one on their profile so that their friends could like go into it. And then they'd be trying to collect all of the different Easter eggs before Easter. It ended up being super viral. We ended up with like 100 users after the first week, 1,000 after the first month, and it just kept like snowballing.
Yeah, that's nuts. And so you didn't know then that this was going to take off like that when you made it? You're just kind of throwing stuff at the wall a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, I had this Google AdSense account, so I had put these like Facebook ads on there, and it was profitable from almost day one. Like there was so much traffic going to it, seeing these ads, that like it quickly became the most lucrative website that I had ever launched.
Did it do better than your first product, then I take it?
Oh yeah, so we had, within the first year, we had over 1 million users, and yeah, it just kept snowballing. So kind of the growth pattern would be like the month or two lead up to Easter, it would just like skyrocket in popularity and go completely viral. And then Easter would come around, and a lot of people didn't want to play an Easter egg hunt after Easter, but a lot of people, like, they just liked the game and they wanted to keep collecting things. And so we'd plateau, spike for Easter, and then like drop off. But that like drop off point where it would plateau again that year would be significantly higher than we started. And so like it was just like this step function year after year of how many people were continuing to play. And yeah, we just kind of grew from there. We ended up launching a subscription model shortly thereafter, where it's $10 a month and you get extra features in the game. And now we've actually completely dropped ads altogether. And so our entire business model is subscriptions and virtual goods.
What was that transition like for you guys, switching from straight up like ads all the way over to...
Yeah, so it wasn't really by choice. We had this like good working relationship with Google because we were making a ton of money through advertisements, and like they were like pitching all this stuff. And then all of a sudden I wake up in the morning, I go to check my Google AdSense account. I can't log in. I've got an email from them that says like you've been banned from the platform. And I try and contact my person, and she like won't even reply to my emails. And like to this day, they have never said like why we're banned. Like I still don't know. And the closest they would tell me was our algorithms have detected that like this is not a website that is good for our advertisers, and that you pose a risk of violating our terms of service or something. So like they didn't even accuse it, like they wouldn't even tell me what I'm supposed to be defending myself like of doing. And so it's like hard to like prove yourself innocent when you haven't even been accused of anything. So anyway, that was rough. That was like overnight, half of our revenue just went away.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like if we hadn't done those virtual goods and had those subscribers and like had this like contingent of users that were willing to pay for things, like that would have been a death blow for the company.
Yeah.
But since we had diversified from that before, we just kind of like kept rolling, and it was a hard couple of years trying to build our business back up to like a self-sustainable point. But yeah, I mean, we've had users who've stuck with us for 10 years now and have been paying their $10 a month premium subscription ever since the day we launched it. And
that's crazy.
Like those are the users that have really helped us like have staying power, which is kind of weird for a game to like be around for 10 years.
Right. My question is like, how do you know what to do in those situations when they come up?
Like you got to make a decision one way or another. Like it's oftentimes like there's not a clear right decision, and the only wrong decision is to like just freeze and do nothing, right? Like people don't oftentimes understand that choosing to do nothing is oftentimes a valid decision, and it's the default, right? Like, I don't know, like that's one of the things we struggle with too, is like sometimes doing nothing is the right decision. You can't do everything. And
yeah. So you kind of went through that transition from ads to subscriptions. Walk me through, what was that, year 3, year 5, something like that?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah, so year 5 to year 10, what happened there?
Yeah, so the early years of Hatchlings, like I was like, this needs to be like my thing, like while it's hot, because it's not going to be a thing forever. And so I ended up like dropping out of school so I could focus on Hatchlings. And then started like hiring some people and trying to like make sure that our servers weren't crashing, because that was still like, that was something that plagued us for the first several years. Was we had so many users, and like nobody around me had ever dealt with like trying to scale up a web service to like having tons of users. So fortunately, our hosting company had like some consulting time that you could buy, and they taught me like what a load balancer is and like how you get beyond just like a single server, how you split out a database from like a web tier server, and that was super helpful. But anyway, after like year 3, 4, 5, somewhere in that range, after I dropped out of school, and like it became clear that like this wasn't just going to go poof completely overnight, and like people were really going to play this thing for like a long time. Started thinking about like, well, how do I grow this into a company and beyond just a single game? And so started trying to hire out a team that could help work on like developing the next iteration of Hatchlings, which we launched as Hatchlings 2, and developing other games. And it had become pretty clear that mobile was going to be like a new platform, and trying to diversify off of Facebook and get onto mobile and like create more of a foundation than just like a single product. So going from a product to a company, basically.
Yeah. And you made that transition, and where are you at now?
Yeah, so that first time that I tried to do that didn't really work.
I'm not surprised for some reason.
Yeah, so we ended up, we went from, well, in the very early days, the first people I hired my mom full-time to like help with support. And
it's
like,
really cool, by the way.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I mean, it was kind of like just by default, like she had been helping me with a lot of stuff anyway, and so like hiring her and like paying her so that she could spend more time on that just made a lot of sense. I hired my sister to do customer support too. She was still in high school and needed a like part-time job, and hired some friends around me to like do some customer support and those sorts of things. But when I say like at the time period where I was trying to like turn this into a company and start trying to expand things, then it was a matter of like going out and hiring a designer and developers and like actual like people around the core product, like not just maintenance of the existing product, but how do we expand. Turned out that there was no correlation between hiring new people and making more revenue, and so we ended up like going from being this like super profitable company to the point where like we were losing money, and I don't know, that was like a weird position to be in. Like all of a sudden this like passive income thing had not only turned into like this company where people are like on payroll and like you have responsibilities, but also like not even was it not passive income, like it wasn't even like active income, it was like actively losing money. Like we were spending more time and effort on it, and it was losing money.
Yeah.
So anyway, we ended up going through a contraction. We had to let some people go, and some people left kind of on their own for other endeavors. And for a while there, it was just 3 or 4 of us again. And yeah, working on building it back to like a core stable base, figuring out like, okay, why are people actually playing? Like, why was our first game and second game so successful, Hatchlings and Hatchlings 2, but like these other games that we were launching, we couldn't get any traction with them. And so trying to really understand like what makes Hatchlings special, why people played that game for 10 years, and like how can we leverage our strengths to like expand in a like strategic way rather than just, you know, throwing a bunch of money into things and seeing like randomly if something's going to work.
Mm-hmm. So how did you guys bounce back from that kind of scale down or whatever you want to call it?
Doubling down on the core Hatchling side of things seemed to really work well. It's like kind of like a stable company at this point, or a stable product at this point, where we can grow at like 30% year over year, which has been great, and like that provides a solid foundation where then we can like take some of the profits from that and funnel them into new things.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap for this show. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Trevor Carlson, and I appreciate you taking the time to stop by, and whether it's viewing our episodes or listening to our podcast or reading our blog posts, all of you guys really help keep the show going. So I much appreciate your time and attention, and hopefully we provided a little bit of value for you. Now, if you're interested and you think you might enjoy getting some blog posts, emails, other podcasts, guides, any of that sort of thing sent to your inbox every week, go ahead and head over to theformulapodcast.com and sign up for our email list today. That's a wrap for this week's show. Thanks again, everyone, for stopping by, and I look forward to you tuning in next time.